Okay, students, so I'd like to kind of just show you my setup so that you guys have a good idea of how to prepare for this. So what I have here is my easel, or you can use a chair, and propped up is my tone paper. I trimmed it down just a little bit for a couple of reasons. One, I'm not going to put a border on mine. I don't think it's necessary. You can if you wish, because that could look really nice, but I just wanted to fit on the board better. And also, I wanted to make sure I had some scraps. By cutting off the extra pieces, I now have a couple of scraps here that I can do some testing on. So when I'm practicing mixing my colors, I can mix them on these and see what they look like before I apply it onto my good paper over here. Then of course, siding stick, an eraser will work, pencil sharpener, your pastels, and I think for the underdrawing, I would recommend go ahead and using just your white charcoal pencil. That would work good. I also like the idea of maybe using something like a red, just a burnt sienna colored pencil, but if you don't have one of those, don't worry about it, and it's not a big deal. Now, more importantly though, is your setup over here, your still life. And you're gonna wanna pick some objects that have color to them and colors that look good together. I went ahead and went with sort of the October theme, of course, with the pumpkin. And I have some zucchini in a brown bottle. And also I got a colored sheet to put underneath them. So instead of just being white, I have lots of colors to play with now. I recommend keeping it somewhat simple because if you overdo it, you're gonna give yourself way too much work. And what you'll realize is when looking even at simple objects, let's go a little closer, there's gonna be a lot of colors in here for you to look at. All right, sort of the warm yellow hues over here on the pumpkin, the different tones of the shadow, this kind of flesh colored reflection based off of this yellow on the green, the amber color that's coming through the brown bottle, even the orange that's showing up over here in the shadows. Those are all little bits of information that you really want to start to look for. Part of drawing color, really, is learning how to see the perceived colors, the way light makes subtle changes, and trying to capture those changes in your drawing, just like you do with value. Trying to see those subtle changes in value, you're trying to see the subtle differences between a warm green and a cool green. Now, the other thing I'm going to use, of course, is my siding window to kind of get me a good composition. It's kind of messing with the color, it's weird, but I think I'm going to go for something like that. And lastly, what I want to say is your light source. Even though color is really sort of, beautiful and seductive and awesome, the most important thing about this is going to be the value. You could draw your pumpkin green, you can draw your bottle the wrong color, you can draw the zucchini, blue. Those things are, they can be a little bit off, but if the value's not there, it really doesn't even matter. It could still look cool as long as the values are good. It's really, really important to remind yourself of that. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and take a picture of this and show it to you in black and white. I recommend maybe doing the same thing with your own setup, and that way you can really observe it in just the grayscale and remind yourself that those are the tones that you're shooting for when mixing color. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is just some practical sort of mixing applications, or how to sort of apply your pigments, maybe some do's and don'ts, just, I don't know, just to get you more familiar with the medium. Basically, in chalk pastel, it's very much like painting. You have pigment, it's just in dry form. It's in these little bricks of pastel rather than suspended in some sort of liquid medium like oil or acrylic or watercolor. So in a lot of ways, it works the same way. Very much like when you guys were doing those charcoal drawings, it's a lot like painting. First of all, there's a lot of ways of applying your pastels. One of the things that I kind of want to suggest avoiding is mixing and oversaturating your page. So in other words, let's say I take this green here and I fill it in, and it needs to be a little bit darker over here, so I add some that green. Maybe I'm going to add a little bit of red into it. Rather than putting it together like this and using my finger to push it into the fibers of the paper, I'm going to try to avoid that as much as possible. You might find that it's better to actually let the color of the paper come through, just like with our paper bag assignment. Okay, so you want this paper color to sort of come through. So instead, when I'm going to try to make colors, and notice too, this ends up being a little bit muddy, kind of bruised looking. Of course, I can fix that. You know, I could add more scumbling of pigment over the top and sort of get that freshness back. But what I'm going to try to do instead is attempt more mixing just on the page with the pastels and not use my hand to rub it in, okay? So we just learned about some of the color theory with complementary colors, and I want to show you a little bit how that works. So one of the biggest mistakes that people do is use too much black. In fact, you want to avoid using black as much as possible. And if you do use it layered with another color so that maybe you can get those darker tones, but at the same time, it doesn't read as just straight black. Because black skittered across the page is very kind of dirty. And it doesn't do your pigments any favors. Typically, it messes them up pretty bad. The best example would be yellow. Say if you use a yellow color, okay, and then all of a sudden I decide, well, that yellow is too bright, and I want to make it darker. Rather than taking this black and adding it in, you start to get this color that's like disgusting puke. It's not a good tone of yellow. So instead, I'm going to test out that theory of taking a yellow color like this. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and grab this one. It's a little more golden. Okay. And I'm going to add a little bit of purple to it, which is its complementary opposite. And I don't know if you can see this, but it's deepening. It's getting darker, but it's not looking dirty. It's not turning greenish like this one is. It's keeping to this sort of good golden hue. So in theory, that should happen with all the colors. For example, like if I have orange, I should be able to find a blue and it should kind of deepen it if this actually is a true complement. The problem with that theory is it's good in theory, but you have to have colors that are truly complementary opposite. And it's not always absolutely, guaranteed that the ones that are in your kit are going to be absolutely 100% complements of each other. Just something to keep in mind. Getting a lot of stuff from my cutting board coming through. It's kind of making it have these dumb textures. So just try to ignore that part. Anyways, let's talk about, let's say I do plan on using black. I'm gonna get this a little bit brightened up. I'm gonna add this color to it, lighten it up a little. Starting to get some kind of tan color here, but it has a bit of an orangish undertone to it. Now let's say I need to put some black near it somehow. Okay, so I put black next to this orange, right? It still kind of looks dirty. It doesn't really feel right next to that. So what I can do is I can layer blue into it. From a distance, it still pretty much reads it black. But for some reason, it just feels cleaner next to this orange. There's enough of that blue in it coming through that when it's next to this orange, it just feels better. And the same would go as if I had a red, maybe I'd put some dark green in the shadow, or if it was black next to some red, I'd put some whatever. The truth be told, all those color theories and all that stuff is great. It's good to know and it's good to keep in the back of your head. But the primary thing that you're going to realize from doing this is color really is learned through practice, experimentation, and being sort of a mad scientist. You kind of have to just get in here and play with the idea of mixing colors, trying to make colors that work for your image or for your drawing on those little test strips. And when you find something that works, a combination of colors that really feel right to you, use that, and then, just keep going with it. But you have to experiment. That's really the only way. White is another one. Now this is another one I want to bring up while I have a chance. I'll get a cleaner one here. So here's some white, and I can use this to lighten, for example, this yellow. But it will make it a little bit milky. It also kind of muddies your colors a little bit. It's better. White is more acceptable and easier to use than black. Black you want to avoid more. But white too, you want to be a little bit careful of overusing, because you can use it in such a way that it can sort of destroy your pigments as well. Just be sparing with it. But white's okay. White's okay because sometimes you just have to get a lighter version. So let's see. Here's a good example. A violet and a dark blue. And I need to make those lighter. Adding white to it makes sense. Okay. Now, finally, the thing that you really want to realize when working in color, or really want to shoot for, I should say, as an artist, is don't think that because, say, my pumpkin is orange, that I should be able to just pick an orange out of my kit and that's going to be good to go. Orange is the local color. It's the color that the pumpkin is. However, what you need to see as an artist is all the different colors that are happening because of the light, because of the reflections of other colors bouncing around, other colors reflecting onto that object, the sort of cast of the shadow on the object. All those things are slight variations. And so orange is going to need to be layered with a bunch of different things. So think of your colors as in layers. So for example, I put some orange down. Okay, and I end up needing this to become, brighter on part of it. I might pick one of these yellows. Now, this one probably is going to be the best. I'm trying to find one that doesn't have too much green in it. And as I start to layer it like that, I get a different quality of orange. See how that's changing? Blow that excess off there. And I don't have a red, unfortunately, but this might do. I'm going to add a little bit of red in there. And kind of make this part darker. But essentially I'm layering these colors. Okay, so I got lighter oranges, kind of medium tone oranges, and then deeper redder oranges over here. I wish I had a better red though. That one sucks. Okay, so think of your colors and layers. Really important thing to do. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do the opposite of what I told you not to do, and I'm going to use my finger to mix some of these. And sometimes that's advisable. There are times when you really want to kind of get a mixed tone. Of course, it looks a little bruised and funny there, but I can go back in and clean up edges. I can do whatever I have to do. But sometimes you do really want to just saturate the paper. I've seen it done both ways, and both are acceptable. Of course, you're gonna have to watch out for the extra pigment on your fingers. Maybe I want this to be a little bit lighter still. I'll use some white. But of course, white's kind of cool. Adds a little bit of coolness to it. And sometimes that doesn't always work. You might have a warm yellow that would work better. Or using something that is slightly off-white. You know, a very light color, but isn't a true white. So maybe I'll use that for my reflection. Okay, so you see kind of how this is all working together now? Now, I'll do a better version of my pumpkin, obviously. This is just kind of for a demo. But just keep in mind, you're gonna be experimenting a lot and you're gonna be playing a lot with how these work, okay?